Why is sports anime so good? Think about it for a sec. It probably has more S-tier ranked shows than any other genre, and it doesn't even need crazy superpowers. Besides this, nor does it need crazy monsters or some kind of grand villain, besides him. But with so many bangers, it's impossible to choose one sports anime that's better than the rest. Well, almost impossible. There is one sports anime that literally takes the others by the throat, pins them against the wall, and... But the thing is, it's probably the last anime you'd expect. And that's because there is no reason at all for Inazuma 11 to be this amazing. It's a 2008 anime that's an adaptation of a game series, and it goes from a group of kids fighting against the odds to win a football tournament to eventually traveling through time, fighting aliens, and uncovering a deep-rooted evil government plot. It's ridiculous, but it just does so many things right in a way other sports anime can only hope to. But what even makes a good sports anime? Chances are you watch sports anime because you like sports or anime, usually both. It's a genre of anime that has the unique appeal of combining the tension and drama of competition with compelling characters and narratives. And when it comes to characterization, the likes of Haikyuu, Hajime no Ippo, Aoashi, and even Blue Lock are king. There's also the narrative aspect, where again, Hajime no Ippo and Ace of Diamond really shine. And finally, there's the pure hype of Kuroko no Basket that we literally salivate at the mouth over. But Inazuma 11 excels in pretty much all of these categories, even though it really shouldn't. We can all agree it has a banger opening. But for all intents and purposes, it is a kids show. It's goofy, ridiculous, and over the top. Right? Wrong. Well, technically those things are true, but I'm going to show you that it has better psychological depth than Blue Lock, better character relationships than Haikyuu, better emotional resonance than Hajime no Ippo, and of course, even more hype than Kuroko no Basket. And I'll show you all of this using just one game from the entire series. Raimon versus Royal Academy. This is one of the most popular matches in the show. Everything from the build-up to the final kick is utterly stunning, and I'd argue very underappreciated. It involves betrayals, plot twists, a literal murder attempt, a single line of dialogue that I genuinely believe is some of the best writing I have ever seen in any anime, and some brilliant foreshadowing. And that's without talking about the match itself, which not only has some of the most hype moments in the series, but also deals with a surprisingly layered issue, with Endo struggling to find himself because of a mental conflict caused by a very clever and expertly executed plot twist. But we can't talk about why this match and this twist is so good without understanding the genius behind the very intentional plot points that come before it. I'd say it's a little similar to how in Haikyuu you can only really appreciate the true stakes of the Shiratorizawa game after you've seen the team losing to Seijo, reinventing themselves through 5 more games, and finally beating Seijo in an incredibly hard-earned victory. And only after all of that have we earned the right to watch the Shiratorizawa game. Except it isn't like that at all. It's better. Let me explain. Just like how Karasuno plays Seijo twice in an official game, Raimon also played Royal Academy twice. The difference being while one game was close, the other wasn't. The show uses this opportunity to set up Royal as this unstoppable force that have won the football frontier 40 years in a row. In this sense, they're similar to Shiratorizawa, with a psychotic evil genius as their coach. But the thing is, other than this match, the build-up to this game happens in just 3 episodes instead of over multiple seasons like in Haikyuu. That shouldn't really work. It isn't enough time to establish complex plot points and have the viewer invested. But if you've watched the show, ask yourself if you are invested. Chances are you were. Here's why. In Haikyuu, it takes 15 episodes for Karasuno to play their first official game. In Inazuma 11, it takes 6. In fact, there are 5 matches in just the first 11 episodes. Pretty much a match every other episode. Now, I'm not saying one of these is better than the other. Haikyuu is and will always be my favorite sports anime. Inazuma 11 just has a slightly different audience, so it does things slightly differently. But boy, do they make it work. And it's incredible how they do it in such a short amount of time. And part of this is because after non-stop action, we're given 3 entire episodes of break before the Royal Academy game. But it isn't perfect. At least not narratively. To show you what I mean, let's quickly run through what's happened so far before the Royal Academy match. Raimon play a cult who hypnotize them, but Endo breaks through it thanks to anime bullshit. Then they play farm and beat them using the Inazuma drop, which takes a while for them to get right. Remember this move because it's very important. They then play brainwashing, which is my favorite game in the entire show, and Raimon win using the Inazuma 1, which they kinda pull out their ass, and it's my only complaint about the show. Regardless, their next opponent are Otaku Junior High and their pedophile coach, and they end up winning thanks to some heroics from a player who up until this point was just a bench warmer. These matches are really fun and incredibly hype, but narratively speaking, it's kind of all over the place. Nothing here really sets up for or is even relevant to the Royal Academy game, except for one thing that's been built up throughout. And after this, the show takes it to the next level. So what is that one thing? Well, it all starts with Royal's very own spy, Domon. When he first joined the club, he almost seemed proud of the fact he was a Royal Academy spy. But after spending time with Endo and the team, he begins to resent what he has to do, almost to the point of him getting run over. I have no idea how Aki is somehow always in the right place at the right time, but it's a really good thing she stopped him. Not because it saved his life, that would be too simple, but because we get some lore drop. And we also get to see some pretty good character development for Domon, and it doesn't seem unrealistic because of how gradual it is. And the show does a great job of building on this with the next scene that involves Aki. She notes that Domon doesn't seem like himself during training, but instead of interfering herself, she asks Haruna to do it. This is some amazing writing, and it's practically done with just one line. Aki is Domon's childhood friend. Realistically, there's nobody better to talk to him, but she also understands that maybe the fact they're so close is getting in the way of Domon being able to open up, so she selflessly sends Haruna instead. Who knew this goofy ass show could be serious too? Sending Haruna is also a fantastic way to transition into the next scene where we're given a huge plot twist.
Raimon 中の偵察にでも来たの？待って。
話せ。俺とお前は会っちゃいけないんだよ。
I remember first watching this and having my mind blown. And for those that have watched the show, you'll know this little revelation plays a huge part in the upcoming game. But if you thought this revelation was crazy, you haven't seen anything yet. Domon soon finds out that the Raimon coach, who we already know is working for Kageyama, has done something to the team bus.
一つだけ忠告しておきますよ。このバスには乗らないことです。
This part always makes me wonder if he would have told Domon about the bus sabotage if Domon hadn't walked in on him. Like, if Domon hadn't found out, would the coach have just let Domon die? It's a pretty scary thought, but not anywhere near as scary as what Kageyama has planned. But before we get to that, we see the team coming up with some new special moves, which is cool and all, and you can pause to check out this tier list, but the main focus is what the hell Natsumi read in this letter that has her so terrified. Luckily, the best girl in the show doesn't piss about and forces the coach to test drive the team bus. Can I just ask why this girl has so much power? I know she's the chairman's daughter and all, but forcing a teacher to do something seems a bit much. But then again, this is one of the funniest insults I've ever heard. It turns out he drained the brake fluids from the team bus so Raimon would be badly injured in an accident on the way to their next game, which makes me ask the question, why is junior football so important in this anime that adults conspire to literally murder children? And why the hell does Natsumi have the power to fire teachers? And before the coach leaves, he tells the rest of the team that Domon is a spy too. And this is where, in my opinion, the show has some of its best writing. And I'm not talking about good for the standards of Inazuma 11 writing. I mean that the next few scenes are genuinely up there with some of the best of Haikyuu. Endo still defends Domon, which speaks volumes of his character, but that isn't something that's new to us. But these little interactions tell us a lot about the rest of the characters. For starters, when Aki finally finds Domon, she doesn't bring up what happened. She doesn't blame or even try to reassure him. She just talks to him about football because that's what makes him comfortable. And then Domon finally opens up, saying that he loves playing with Endo because he never has to chase him. He can always run beside him, which makes it feel like he can keep moving forward. I'm sorry, but when did the writing of this show get this good? This is something similar to what Takeda would say in Haikyuu, and that's a huge compliment. And just like Aki, Endo is more than happy to remind Domon that he still has his friends. He doesn't ask him any questions or try to make him feel better. He just plays football with him. And that's when we get the best line of dialogue I have ever seen in this show. And I'm not even gonna say anything. Just pay attention to this conversation.
あなたはドモン君のこと気づいてたんじゃない？
遠藤も気づいてたさ。 ドモンのサッカーへの熱い気持ちをね。
I have no idea what ingredients the writers used to cook up this fire script, but it really goes a long way in showing that yes, Inazuma 11 can be wacky and funny, it can even be hype, but it can also be incredibly heartwarming too. In fact, if you hadn't watched a single minute of the show and only watched this scene, this line alone would tell you all you need to know about the kind of person Endo is. That's genuinely brilliant writing, and it's just one of the many reasons so many people love this anime. It has it all, including the most common anime trope you can think of. And no, I don't mean unnecessary fanfare, I mean tragic backstories. When Domon and Aki were living in the States, which is also where most of you guys are from, but for some reason you don't want to subscribe, which is fine, whatever, they had a friend called Ichinose who was really good and on the American youth national team, and I'm sure any anime fan can figure out what happened next. This puppy was about to be run over, but Ichinose saved him and got turned into a shoe. It's a good thing this isn't an isekai anime, although I wouldn't mind watching That Time I Got Reincarnated as an Aglet. And the thing is, none of this is random. Every single scene has a point, and the writers drip feed us with just the right amount of information so that we can piece things together on our own. By remembering his promise to Ichinose, Domon rejoins the team, but things aren't quite perfect, as there's one more twist to the tale, and that is the fact that Raimon aren't allowed to compete without a coach.
ライモン夏美が頼めば誰かやってくれるんじゃないか。そもそもあんたが不愉快を追い出さなきゃこんなことにはならなかったんだ。責任取ってもらおうじゃないか。
Okay, first of all, I can't believe this guy has the nerve to blame my angel. She literally saved everyone's life. But yeah, they still desperately need a coach. And I'm going to save you guys the trouble and cut out an entire episode by telling you it's the noodle shop owner who used to be the goalkeeper for the legendary Inazuma 11. It's not that this stuff is boring, it's actually a lot of fun, and we find out a lot more lore about the original Inazuma 11. But in the context of the Royal Academy match, there's something else that plays a much bigger role, and half of it involves Royal's captain. The show uses the build-up to the match to expertly express Kidou's inner conflict. They don't tell us too much right away, but we are given a little bit of backstory. Now I'll admit, this is all pretty basic stuff where he was an orphan that got scouted by Kageyama. That's cool and all, but when have you ever seen a 6-year-old hit a bicycle kick this clean? Now I'll get to his full character development later, but he eventually goes to watch Raimon train, and I just wanted to highlight this little bit of animation where Aki notices the look on Haruna's face when she sees Kidou, but doesn't say anything. It's super subtle, and it's stuff like that that makes this show so good. In fact, Kidou and Haruna's relationship is never resolved before the match. It's actually weaved into the game itself, which forces Kidou to juggle two problems. The first is obviously his relationship with his sister, which we'll learn more about in a bit. But the next one involves uncovering one of the craziest plots I've ever seen in sports anime. At first, Kidou is feeling conflicted because he wants to play fairly against Endo, but he also recognizes that he needs to win. This is some pretty good character development because it's gradual and he has actual tangible reasons to feel conflicted. But when he voices these thoughts to Kageyama, we get one of the most important and layered lines in the whole show. If you spit on gods, they'll rain on you later. First of all, this is just a cold ass line. And secondly, for those that have already watched the show, you probably know how this is a subtle hint at what's to come. But it also very cleverly sets up another game that is, in my opinion, one of the best matches in sports anime. But you're going to have to wait a little bit for both of these things because Kidou thinks he's Sherlock Holmes and tries to figure out what Kageyama is planning. And trust me, it's insane. And he's not the only one trying to get to the bottom of things, as half the city's police force is investigating the stadium. Between this and the CIA level analysis before the brainwashing game, I really don't understand why they take youth football so seriously. It really shouldn't be that deep. And things only get deeper when we find out that Kidou can only be reunited with his orphaned sister if he wins 3 football frontiers in a row. I hope this puts into context for you how serious youth football is in this world. This child can only live with his sister if he wins a football competition. And that fact seems to massively affect Endo, especially when he sees Kidou and Haruna arguing. So now we've got 2 things stopping us from watching this amazing game. Number 1 is the fact that Kageyama has planted some kind of trap for Raimon. And number 2 is Kidou and Haruna's fractured relationship, which is even affecting Endo. I have no idea when this show went from one person using another person as a baseball bat to something this serious, but it actually makes the upcoming game that much more entertaining. We've waited so long to get to this point. We've played countless matches, and now there's just 2 obstacles left. And luckily, thanks to Kabiyama, we're able to knock the first one out pretty quickly as the game is about to kick off. Okay, I guess I was wrong. Youth football clearly is that deep because this man just tried to kill a group of 12-year-olds by crushing them under steel beams. And if it wasn't for Kidou figuring out his riddle and warning Endo, they probably would have died. If you spit on gods, they'll rain on you later. I wonder how many people realized how literal that statement would turn out. But here's the thing, the writing in this show is somehow so good that there's still a second meaning to this statement. But if you want to know what it is, then you'll have to wait until my next video. So make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss it, because I'm sure you want to know if this is the last we've seen of Kageyama. But for now, with him out of the way and almost every obstacle dealt with besides one, the match you've all been waiting for can finally kick off. And it's no wonder you guys voted this as the best qualifiers game, because so much happens. We start off by meeting the player who is known as the best keeper in the tournament, and he easily stops Dragon Crash with his power shield. And for all you Endo and Natsumi shippers, this line is super cute, but she can't have picked a worse time to say it, because my boy Endo is fighting his own demons and ends up messing up a pretty simple save. And he keeps on fumbling to the point Goenji has to save him with this tackle that should definitely be a red card. Like seriously, he comes in with both feet. He wasn't there to take the ball, he was there to take ankles, and it actually ends up with Kidou being injured. Now I know I've beaten this drum to death, but it's at times like this when the show's writing really shines, because it sets up this amazing interaction between Kidou and Haruna.
私ずっと待っていたのに。やっぱり私が邪魔なんだ。
一度もなかった。お前を忘れたことは一度も。
I genuinely have no idea why this show has such amazing dialogue, but we're about to see an even better scene with the debut of one of the most iconic moves in the entire series. And now the show is even adding lore. This move is called Emperor Penguin number 2. Why number 2? Glad you asked. It's actually super important to the plot, but I won't spoil it just yet. You'll have to wait until we make it to the Alias arc. But for now, let's get back to the game where Endo's team are literally putting their bodies on the line for him, and Domon takes a death zone to the face. I wonder if that makes up for him betraying everyone. Also, how is he alive? The net might be known as the strongest thing in the show, but I'd argue Domon's skull is a close second. And I guess Endo's stomach is up there too, because Goenji literally annihilates him with a fire tornado and pretty much tells him to get his shit together. And surprisingly, he does. This is the part where I couldn't decide if I loved or hated the writing. On the one hand, it was kind of underwhelming that all it took to clear Endo's head was a reminder that he loved football and the match deserved for him to give it his all. It's really sweet, but I also thought it was a bit simple. But that's the thing, Endo is simple, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He's the living embodiment of the spirit of the entire show. He has a childlike love for football similar to Hinata's love for volleyball or Bachira in Blue Lock. Yes, it might not have taken much to remove him from a pretty bad mental situation, but that's just the kind of person Endo Mamoru is. It doesn't take much for him to attack his problems head on, and I mean that literally, because he uses a new special move where he channels his inner Mike Tyson. And on the other end of the pitch, Goenji and Somioka are finally able to score with a very clever use of Dragon Tornado. And if you thought that was amazing, there's still one more absolutely ridiculous special move left for us to see. But before we get to that, Endo still needs to figure out a way to stop Emperor Penguin. So how do you think he does it? Maybe he uses a new technique, or maybe he notices a flaw in the shot that he can exploit. Well, the answer is yes to both. Kinda. I'll be honest, I'm just glad they didn't pull the power of friendship bullshit on us. And just as the match is about to end, we get to see some new special moves, including Flurry Dash, Whirlwind Twister, and kicking the ball really high. Wait, what? Okay, that might have been the most hype moment in the entire show, because what on God's green earth possesses two kids, one of which is the goalkeeper, to jump off the stomach of their fat friend and score a synchronized overhead kick that cements their place in the football frontier? And if you thought that was hype, you have no idea what's left, especially one of the greatest matches in sports anime, where you'll find out why this statement is so clever. But now that we've seen what you guys think is the best match in the qualifiers, click this video on the left to watch my video about a match that I think is even better than the Royal game. Thanks for watching.